end of the world. I could feel all this death.
Everything they've built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
An earthquake measuring 6.3 on the Richter scale affected areas on the north coast of Morocco and the south of Spain in the early hours of Monday morning. The epicenter of the quake, which happened at 4:22 a.m. local time, was in the Mediterranean Sea between Spain and Morocco, and by 8 a.m. a total of 9 aftershocks have been registered, the strongest of which measured 4.5 on the Richter scale. The quake was felt in Spanish cities. The effects were mostly noted in the Spanish enclave of Melilla, where hundreds of people took to the street for fear of their homes collapsing. There have been no reported victims of the quake, which happened at a depth of 10 kilometers. Although substantial material damage was caused in Melilla, where cracks in buildings and parts of facades and balconies have collapsed. Authorities in the city have decided to keep schools and colleges closed in order to carry out safety checks.
Is experiencing extreme weather as well. People are struggling with heavy snow and rain. CCTV's Michael Bardaviv has the story.
Since the beginning of January, sporadic storms have covered many places across Turkey in snow. Though the sight is beautiful, the effects were harsh. Schools were shut down for several days. Business people experienced difficulty reaching their offices. Hundreds of flights were cancelled during the last few weeks, and many were stranded at the Atatürk airport in Istanbul due to delays and last-minute cancellations. The government issued warnings stating snowfall is expected to continue until January 25th. Many businesses were hit by the weather.
Since the beginning of the new year, with the snow, our business has dropped 50%. If we had a roof for our customers, it would be better. But with no roof, we are badly affected.
Contrary to most industries in Turkey, there was one trade that was positively affected by the heavy snowfall, as many in Turkey were unable to take their car outs due to frosty roads and dangerous traffic, and that was taxi services.
Because people were nervous. They were afraid to drive. We had plenty of business. But we are prepared. We have snow tires, no tire chains, so we are not affected.
Yet despite salting efforts to clear roads by municipalities, those who did drive during extreme conditions suffered long hours of traffic, and some faced the almost inevitable crashes. Multi-vehicle collisions and sliding cars were a common scene on major highways. Dozens were injured in traffic accidents across the country in cities including Istanbul and the capital, Ankara. Though temperatures are on the rise, meteorologists have warned people to take extra safety precautions during the next few days. Michael Bardavid,
In the depths of a chilly winter in the Northern Hemisphere, it's hard to imagine, but there's actually too much sunshine for many in summertime South America. More precisely, it's ultraviolet radiation that's reaching dangerous levels in parts of Chile, Bolivia, and Peru. CCTV's Dan Collins reports from Lima.
Spare a thought for those hitting the beach in Peru's coastal capital. While they're enjoying the summer sunshine, many are unaware that they're being exposed to some of the world's strongest ultraviolet radiation. Orlando Cora from Peru's Meteorological Institute is measuring just how strong those UV rays are.
In the capital, we're measuring level 12 for ultraviolet radiation, which is very high and a health risk, and that's in spite of the overcast skies.
Just to be clear, according to the UV index, any score of 11 or more indicates extreme levels of ultraviolet radiation to be avoided entirely.
I didn't know the UV radiation was so strong. I don't like wearing hats on the beach, so we'll have to be more sunblock.
But in this city by the sea, persuading people to steer clear of the beach is no easy task.
It's impossible for us to change. We're not interested in or worried about the damage. The authorities have failed to warn us about the dangers.
While vendors sell sunblock and some are making sure their kids have it on, medical advice says that's not enough protection from the midday sun. According to doctors, people at this time of day in Lima should be using wide-brim hats, sunglasses, long-sleeve shirts and factor 50 sunblock. It will come as no surprise to know that I'm probably the only person on this beach, with the exception of my short-sleeve shirt, who's following those recommendations. The authorities don't want to ruin anyone's summer fun, but they are warning parents to keep children inside between the peak hours of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Exposure to excessive UV radiation can cause serious health problems, from premature aging to cataracts and skin cancer. There's no hard data on the incidence of skin cancer in Peru, but doctors say cases are on the rise, especially in the young.
Why is there an increase in the number of cases of young people? 1, because of the depletion of the ozone layer. 2, because there's more ultraviolet radiation. And 3, because there's much more prolonged exposure to that UV radiation from a young age.
Add Peru's subtropical latitude and this year's El Niño weather phenomenon, and there's a perfect storm for dangerous UV radiation levels. Particularly at altitude, where UV index measurements are peaking at 15 and above in cities in the Andes Mountains. With limited public awareness of the dangers, keeping people out of the sun is proving a huge challenge. Dan Collins, CCTV, Lima.
In many parts of Japan, a weekend of snow has caused major disruption, with more to come. Until now, snowfall had been below average, and some ski resorts even had to close. They may welcome the snowstorm, but it's caused temperatures to plummet. South Korea has also suffered. The southern island of Jeju had the heaviest snowfall in more than 30 years. Flights have been cancelled and thousands of holidaymakers left stranded.
Staying in the airport is really exhausting, and I really want to get out of Jeju. I have been at the airport for 12 hours.
The temperature in the capital Seoul dropped to -18 Celsius. In northern China, temperatures went below -40 as the country endured the same blast of polar air. The freezing conditions caused disruption to road, rail and air schedules. And they have come in the run-up to the Lunar New Year holiday, just when millions of people start travelling. The chill has even reached the normally subtropical South China coast. Hong Kong has recorded its lowest temperatures in nearly 60 years, while in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou, local media is reporting the first snow since 1929. And there are still a few more days to shiver through yet. Sharing a similar latitude, parts of Vietnam were also caught out by the cold snap. Some farmers say their animals have died from the cold while their crops have perished.
Since I was born, I've never seen anything like this. This weather is badly affecting our society and my family's economy.
In Taiwan, people appeared to be enjoying the unusual appearance of snow, but more than 30 deaths have been blamed on the plunging temperatures that came with it. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
The weather is unpredictable. This tented village is near what was the epicenter of the earthquake that took the lives of around 9,000 people last April. The entire village of Laprak had to be moved 1,000 meters uphill onto this plot of government land. Surveyors had given it a red certificate, meaning it was in danger of being swept away by landslides. But snowstorms over the last 2 weeks have brought biting cold and made the lives of the villagers miserable. Rosila Guru, a primary school teacher, worries about her 5-month-old daughter.
I can't sleep at night because my feet get really cold. Some nights I have to keep massaging my feet to keep them warm. We might just die this winter.
The walls of the shelter are just tarpaulin. There is nothing to shield those inside from the bitter cold.
Rosila here sleeps with her daughter Asika on this bed, and this is where Asika will sleep. It feels quite damp. As you can see, there is a plank that separates the ground from the mattress, and if you put your hand beneath this mattress, it becomes wet.
As night falls, people huddle beside fires and desperately rub on oil in an attempt to warm themselves up. Rosila is scared that her daughter will catch pneumonia. Many children and old people have been getting sick. The morning brings the sun, and the snow and the ice start melting. A local activist tells us that villagers are being forced to choose between the cold and the risk of landslides.
Just last week, the government gave the final nod to allow us to relocate on this plot of land. If they had given approval a few months ago, we would have built ourselves warmer houses. Some of the older people are going to our old village and staying there in the ruins. The cold can be unbearable up here.
Billions of dollars have been pledged to rebuild the country, but there have been delays in deciding what land is available to relocate families away from risky areas. And reconstruction hasn't started yet. Many here told us that they want government officials responsible for reconstruction to come and experience the cold. Perhaps then, they say, they will be serious about rebuilding their lives. Subina Shrestha, Al Jazeera, Laprak, Northwest Nepal.
Iraq's oldest Christian monastery has been reduced to rubble. A holy site that survived hundreds of years of war and peace could not survive the hands of terror group ISIL. CCTV's Jessica Stone reports.
For 14 centuries, St. Elijah's Monastery in Mosul, Iraq, stood for peace and faith, hosting worshippers from around the world. But these newly obtained satellite images confirm the monastery was standing when ISIL militants took over the area in 2014, only to be ground to powder just 1 month later.
There's nothing left. Small piles of rocks, perhaps, but nothing that would look like the monastery.
Our Christian history leveled in a barbaric way.
Reverend Paul Thabit Habib can hardly believe the monastery in his hometown of Mosul is gone.
All the poets, historians, and travelers who wrote about this monastery, they described the priests, the atmosphere inside. It became a very important place for the history of the church in Iraq.
The destruction is the latest victim of ISIL militants. Last year, ISIL released video showing the destruction of Hatra in Iraq, a UNESCO heritage site from the time of Alexander the Great. In 2014, they featured another attack in Mosul, justifying the attacks as part of protecting their interpretation of Islam. What they don't destroy, they sell, earning income for their so-called caliphate.
They're benefiting not only from the sale, but also just from the trade itself.
Suzanne Bott helped restore St. Elijah's Monastery when she worked as a U.S. State Department cultural advisor. She says the result is the same, a loss for generations to come.
They will never be able to stand in these locations
and experience the feeling of looking around and seeing what our ancestors were able to do.
Jessica Stone.
Signs of the season around here in the Bay Area, the annual migration of the Florida manatee into warmer waters near natural springs and the man-made warmth of canals near power plants. And as ABC Action News meteorologist Bill Logan tells us, this week's colder weather has brought them out in what could be record numbers.
Ever since their numbers dwindled to less than 1,800 statewide in 2002, the Florida manatee has been staging something of a comeback. Last year, researchers counted more than 6,000 sea cows, with over 2,700 along the Gulf Coast waters. As the weather turned colder this week, scenes like this were common as Fish and Wildlife researchers counted over 1,000 in Citrus County waters alone. And here in Apollo Beach near the Tico Big Bend power plant, those familiar with the manatee migration say this season's swimmers could top the 600 plus that called the canal home in 2015.
Oh, lots of manatees. There's probably a couple hundred out there easy. And then you've got lots of shark and lots of rays and lots of fish.
There's a couple hundred just here where you can obviously see, but if you go straight down the canal all the way to the end, there's a lot more manatees that you're not able to see.
Have you seen this many manatee out here before?
No, I don't think I have, actually.
They're lucky.
And just as sure as the manatees are back, so too are the folks flocking to see them.
In the 15 years I've been out here, we've had anywhere from 160 to over 300,000 visitors in 5.5 months.
And this year, with the sightings so plentiful, the crowds have swelled.
I was here before, a few years ago, but there weren't this many people, so this is definitely attracting a lot of tourists this winter.
But all this positive publicity could be short-lived. There's a proposal to reclassify the manatee from an endangered to a threatened status. And with a move to cut back on coal-fired power plants, these warm water outflow canals could be shutting down. So the manatee might have to migrate even farther south. It'll be a survival story worth watching. In Apollo Beach, Bill
Concern
Logan,
is brewing
ABC
today as
Action
health
News.
officials try to figure out what's causing a major viral outbreak among inmates at the Putnamville Correctional Facility in Putnam County. One inmate has died and 18 others are being treated for viral symptoms ranging from the flu to pneumonia. One of those inmates is reportedly on a ventilator. Several health agencies are trying to figure out what's causing the outbreak while treating all of the inmates who are now sick.
Rising sea levels are taking a dramatic toll on low-lying islands and cities around the world, and many are already trying to guard against an uncertain future. CCTV's Paulo Cabral visited one such community in Brazil's port city of Santos.
Despite its seaside location, Santos is not an idyllic tropical resort town. It's a big industrial city, home to the largest port on South America's Atlantic coast, with some nice beaches on the side. However, over the last decade, long stretches of sand have disappeared. People who live here say they are already facing the consequences of climate change.
A few years ago, these stones were not here. There was just a ramp to reach the sand that people used to bring their canoes and kayaks down to the sea. Now you see we don't have sand here anymore, but only these stones put down by the authorities to protect the shore.
A recent study by an international pool of universities in conjunction with Brazilian government researchers foresees that sea levels around Santos will rise between 18 and 23 centimeters by 2050 and by as much as 45 centimeters by 2100. The researchers see no risk of any part of the city being permanently lost to the sea, but say large areas could be subject to frequent flooding. The city of Santos has acknowledged the problem and set up a group to work on a mitigation plan to be presented over the next year.
For a few years now, we have already been preparing for the rise in the sea level, as it is inevitable. We have been putting stones on the shore and bringing back sand that is carried away from the sea. But now we are working on a larger scale plan to offer more permanent solutions.
Beyond the beaches, officials are focusing on an upgrade of the area's drainage system, made up of a large network of canals across Santos. The most affluent parts of the city next to the ocean risk losing their beaches as the level of the sea rises. But in the poorest parts of town, there's even more at stake. Many people here live in precarious stilt houses built right above the mangroves. Jane Maria is a slum dweller, fisherwoman and social worker who's been living and working here for almost 4 decades. She says the tide has clearly been getting higher in recent years, often going over the flimsy wooden bridges that connect the houses.
Many times in high tide, the water covers everything here and brings a lot of mud and garbage to our house. We will not be able to live here anymore. The sea level is getting really high and we want to understand exactly what is happening, but no one tells us properly.
Environmental problems are inevitably human problems, impacting man's well-being and survival. It's a reality that's becoming clearer, particularly in poor and fragile areas like this one. Paulo Cabral, CCTV, Santos.
Well, on to our fifth and final story of the program. Asylum seekers in Cardiff, the capital of Wales, are facing a new predicament. They're being forced to wear colored wristbands so that they can be easily distinguished. The newly arrived refugees are told they must wear the wristbands at all times, otherwise they won't be fed. The asylum seekers say the new ruling has resulted in their harassment and abuse by members of the public. Earlier, refugees in Middlesbrough complained that their houses were targeted after a private firm responsible for housing them painted all front doors red. The UK government bans the asylum seekers from working or claiming mainstream benefits.
Another daring rescue in northern Arizona. Today, the Sedona Fire District sending us these photos. A man being pulled from a huge sinkhole west of Bear Mountain. It happened last Sunday. The man was in such a remote location that crews had to work through the night to save him. We're told he was trying to climb into the sinkhole when a tree branch snapped, causing him to fall. He landed on a rock ledge, but thankfully was not seriously hurt.
That many local lakes are stuck at historic lows.
This includes Lake Casitas in Ventura County. That's where we find News Channel 3 reporter Kelsey Gerkins. And Kelsey, the levels are so low, boaters are having trouble launching them.
Beth and CJ, right now where I am standing used to be completely underwater. Right now, Lake Casitas is about 68 feet down from spill level. Now, you might think that rain that we've got over the last few weeks could have helped the lake, but in reality, it only raised it about 2 inches.
As far as rain goes, I thought there'd be a lot more because I haven't been up, like I said, in 3 weeks. I thought it'd be up a little bit more, but it doesn't look like it's made a dent.
Despite the recent rain events, Lake Casitas' water level continues to drop.
The lake is about 42% full, which is the lowest it's been since about 1967. And that's a concern for us because even during the largest El Niños, we've seen maybe like a 40% refill that has occurred during those large El Niños, and that wouldn't be enough to fill up the lake.
Earlier this month, lake levels dropped so low that there was no longer a ramp accessing the lake that boats could launch from.
That was terrible. This is my passion. I love fishing,
But instead of waiting on Mother Nature to bring more rain so they could go fishing again, a group of local fishermen got creative.
Larry Elser and Brian Evans, we got together and we made it happen, Got her back at the lake.
The temporary fix to keeping boats in the water during these historic lake levels is this metal grate. Lake Casitas uses this to safely get boats launched into the water.
And matting, which is this metal-like fabric that the military uses for landing aircrafts on temporary runways, and it appears to be working for us.
Hopefully, like I said, the rain comes, or we'll be sliding it back, so I think we'll be okay.
Really need to concentrate on how we can continue to conserve water and eventually bring up the lake to full capacity.
While the lake is low at Lake Casitas, it is one of the only lakes in our area that still accommodates boat launching. Reporting live at Lake Casitas in Ventura County, Kelsey Gerkins, News Channel 3.
A mosquito-borne virus being blamed for birth defects has now been found in at least 22 locations. 22 News reporter Tamara Sakarczyk joins us with a warning for pregnant women.
If you're pregnant, it might not be the best time to take a tropical vacation. The Zika virus has spread to several parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. Zika is spread through mosquito bites and can cause fever, rash, and joint pain. The symptoms in adults are fairly mild and usually clear up within a couple of weeks, but in unborn children, the virus can be deadly. Bay State Medical Center's Dr. Andrew Healy told 22 News there's a growing concern it might cause birth defects.
Essentially, the development of the brain is affected. The head size is very small, and the implications on the newborn are substantial.
The CDC says pregnant women should avoid traveling to Latin America and the Caribbean, where most of the outbreaks have been. On Friday, 8 new destinations were added to that travel alert.
The virus is suspected of causing severe birth defects, and now there are serious concerns about how far it could spread, including here in the United States. The Now's Jay Cashmere here with an update on the Zika virus. And Jay, it's starting to get a little scary the more we report on this.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a cause for alarm right now. We've reported this on the Now several times about the virus and, more importantly, how it is spread. But now the World Health Organization is really honing in on this. They're warning that the virus is expected to spread to nearly every country in North and South America except for Canada and Chile, where the mosquitoes have not been found. This map here shows the new cases. It's in 21 of the 55 countries across South and Central America right now. The CDC warns that with the recent outbreaks, the number of people coming into the United States with the virus will also likely increase. Here's the thing, though. There's no vaccine to block it, and there's no medicine to treat it at this point. It can spread quickly because people haven't been exposed to it before, but only about 1 in 5 people who are infected actually show symptoms, and usually those symptoms are pretty mild. You can have a fever, a rash, or joint pain, but it has been linked to thousands of babies being born with underdeveloped brains. The upcoming Summer Olympics, it certainly put up red flags in Rio right now. They could be affected by this. A spokesman for the Rio Games says all of the Olympic venues right now will be inspected daily for mosquitoes. That spokesperson says that the committee is also talking with the Brazilian Ministry of Health to really have the latest information for athletes at the games about controlling the virus. That's going to be huge in August when this happens, especially down in South America there. Transmission in the Americas was first detected in Brazil in large numbers in May of last year. The large numbers of mosquitoes that carry this virus, Shannon, on top of the lack of any natural immunity, that's really what's helping it to spread rapidly. Again, the symptoms are mild, but it's still something alarming because it's spreading so rapidly right now.
We're pretty trained here in South Florida to long sleeves, don't go out at dusk, you know, the
mosquito repellent with DEET.
Right, but still, other parts of the country need to be on guard and educated just like us.
Especially with the World Health Organization now weighing in on this.
Absolutely.
We'll
Jay,
keep you posted, you bet.
Thanks, see you at 5:30. All right, cyber news.